Hi everyone. So I'm Laurent, the CEO of Pacific Workplaces and CloudVO. A quick intro for our sister company CloudVO, which is a value-added reseller of virtual offices, meeting rooms, and co-working passes. It's the company that promotes the Cloud Touchdown network and makes access to the network available to highly mobile users and corporate accounts on a subscription basis, as well as on a pay-per-use basis. But I'm here with my hat as CEO of Pacific Workplaces with 19 locations, mostly in Northern California, to talk about our recent acquisition of NextSpace. NextSpace is a legendary company in the co-working world. Started in 2009 out of Santa Cruz, attracted a lot of press, PR, TV, very well known in the whole industry, in part due to the co-founders of the company, Ryan Coonerty, former mayor of the city of Santa Cruz, Jeremy Nooner, a charismatic leader, very inspiring, great speaker that many of you have experienced at some of our co-working and or Global Workplace Association conferences. So people who really put co-working on the map in the US and became well-recognized leaders of the movement. NextSpace was a pride and joy of the city of Santa Cruz because it was instrumental in really changing work as we knew it. And Santa Cruz was very interested in a structure that would enable their freelancers, their startups to have a place to express themselves without having to commute on the other side of the hill to Silicon Valley, just maybe 30 miles away, but sometimes, a good hour away with traffic. And NextSpace did that. So when Pacific Workplaces acquired NextSpace, it also attracted the headlines both locally and globally because people were wondering, what does that mean? Who are they? Who are these people? And are they going to change the nature of our local jewel, NextSpace? Also, NextSpace attracted interest throughout the world. In fact, still does. Recently, we had some Chinese people that came to visit NextSpace Berkeley because they heard about NextSpace as the place to visit if they want to know how co-working is done effectively. Ryan Coonerty, one of the co-founder and co-author with Jeremy Nooner of one of the Bible's book in the co-working world, The Rise of the Naked Economy, still available on Amazon, told me a couple of months that he was invited by some Chinese group to talk about his book and talk about the co-working experiment of NextSpace in China. So clearly, there was a lot of interest because of the different nature of the companies NextSpace and Pacific Workplaces. So in short, NextSpace was born in 2009 in Santa Cruz, but expanded to 7 centers, most of them pretty small, and I want to insist on that because I think it's been one of the problems, as we'll see later, by 2 charismatic leaders. Pacific Workplaces, born in 2003, so a little bit older, although we really started to grow the portfolio to what is today a 19-center portfolio, with much larger locations than NextSpace, about 15 to 20,000 square feet in average, which is about 1,500 square meters. NextSpace locations are about half the size. But we really raised $2 million to fuel that growth at about the same time that NextSpace raised what eventually was $4 million in 2009. Fast forward 8 or 9 years later, we end up with 19 centers, much larger. NextSpace at the acquisition date had 7 centers, and we only acquired 3 of them. One of those that we were not interested in acquire, I think, is trying to make it under a different brand, but the others had to close. So different outcome, financial outcome. But what's certain is that NextSpace has really established a best practice about how to curate a community. And they did it out of open space. We see NextSpace Berkeley on the left-hand side. Very community focused also in Santa Cruz. This is at the top there is a Santa Cruz picture. Informal, funky, very reflective of the broader community where they are located, which is, Santa Cruz is very similar to Berkeley. And Berkeley in America is often referred as the People's Republic of Berkeley. Very socially conscious, events rich, open to the community. Lots of very smart people that graduated from Berkeley, that graduated from Stanford or UC Santa Cruz, 3 outstanding universities. But surfers at the same time and very informal. All of these can be summarized very well in this delightfully tacky mascot of NextSpace, the moose, which is proudly displayed in one of our centers, bright orange plastic with shape, which is quite different from Pacific workplaces that came from the word of serviced offices, the word of boardrooms, with reception services rich in amenities, highly professional, with quotation marks, because NextSpace is very professional too, but in a much more informal sense. Pacific Workplace has its share of informality, but in this picture we see one of our members that wear a tie. I'll tell you, there aren't too many people in California that wear ties anymore to work. I certainly don't, but in Pacific Workplaces you will find that once in a while. It's a word of private offices. In Class A buildings at a much higher price point. So clearly, these are 2 companies that came from different angles in the shared office industry, and they could not be any different other than they share the same shared office industry belonging. So the image of NextSpace, highly informal, to contrast with Pacific Workplace, which is highly professional, more private, community culture being strong and immediate at NextSpace. It's quite something. You go spend a day at NextSpace, you'll come out with at least a couple of friends. You'll come out with the idea that there are people that are there that genuinely will want to help you and support you if you have a need. Not with the idea that people are trying to sell their stuff, because it's certainly not perceived very well in any of our communities, and that's not what's happening at NextSpace, but people genuinely want to help each other be successful. So that community is something that you feel immediately. This is not to say that there is not a very important community culture in the Pacific Workplace locations, but because of the nature of the space being mostly based on private offices, it's slower to grow. It grows on you because we do have a happy hour event on a weekly basis or close. We do have other kind of events, but the space for events is more limited, and we are in the process of tearing down walls to let the community express itself in a bigger, more informal space, even though the majority of the space is still private office. The organization is very decentralized with NextSpace, maybe to a fault. They did share strong, charismatic leaders that were able to inspire their local community managers, and through them the members, to share the same culture, which is great, but it's not enough. Those community managers were left out in the cold to figure things out on their own, figure out tools, technology tools, best practice in marketing. Pacific Workplaces, on the other hand, is very process-driven. I'm very proud of the library of webinars that we have made available for our managers on best practice, how to curate your Yelp page, how to, some of the best practice having to do with operations, having to do with member relationship, having to do with marketing, and also because we have standards and processes, it's easy to shift staff around. If somebody is sick, we can easily bring somebody in any location. We don't do manuals. Process doesn't mean heavy and bureaucratic. It means there's somebody there that is designed to really help you, and it's somewhat formalized. Marketing, NextSpace is the word of mouth, and they did a superb job with working with their broader community, with the city, with nonprofits, with meetup groups, and as a result, the word of mouth worked out very well. But there are some limits to the local word of mouth, which is that the inability to let people outside of your immediate community that you exist. Whereas Pacific Workplaces did a very good job with the digital version of word of mouth, social media, like NextSpace, but also, we have a marketing person dedicated to managing and maintaining the website and SEO and SEM, search engine optimizations, pay-per-click campaign, both the science and the art of it. And because we can amortize that cost of a 19 location, it's very affordable and extremely effective. So we had a much stronger online presence than NextSpace. The next topic, virtual office services, is what we saw as the low-hanging fruit and the financial opportunity for us to turn around the NextSpace financial, which is that virtual office only represented 6% of their revenue, to which you could add 1% for meeting room revenue from outsiders, 7% altogether, grossly insufficient to achieve financial health. Compare it with 30% of revenue for virtual office revenue at Pacific Workplaces that has centers that are twice as big, that generate even much more revenue from full-time office membership, yet 30% of the revenue comes from virtual office, which doesn't take much of a footprint to support and which is extremely profitable. And that includes digital mail, that includes bundles of meeting rooms for visitors on a subscription basis. That includes phone answering services provided on an outsourced basis by CloudVO, and that represents 65-70% gross margin and no cost, no upfront investments. A bunch of low-hanging fruits that we are already developing within the NextSpace locations, in part by adding to the meeting room inventory, in part by upgrading the meeting room space, in part by marketing it with our channels. In the US, the only channels that really matter for co-working passes and virtual office would be certainly CloudVO, our sister company, but there are others like DaVinci and Liquid Space in Europe. I'm not too sure. There's all sorts of startups that are trying and don't make it, and I'm sure some of them will make it eventually. But in the US, just by listing appropriately with those three channels, that would secure a significant business. And all of this led to a financial profile that was very weak for NextSpace, while it is very strong for Pacific Workplaces. NextSpace raised $4 million at the same time. Pacific Workplaces raised $2 million in 2009 to fuel the growth, and we ended up with 19 locations, being very, very profitable. NextSpace ended up with 7 locations, half of them already closed, and for us, the acquisition of NextSpace is really a turnaround financial situation. as well as the opportunity to acquire all of this best practice of community curation. So there's more than just a financial play in that acquisition. What was very important to us is only to look at assets that are in our backyard. Santa Cruz is only 30 miles away from the closest Pacific Workplace locations in Cupertino, right next to Apple Computers. And the others are, again, very close to an existing PAC location. In red here is NextSpace in Palo Alto, which is a co-working locations we have developed in partnership with Jamie Russo, the Global Workplace Association's executive director. So we already had experience with pure open co-working location, and certainly help us evaluate the NextSpace opportunity. So given that, what did NextSpace go wrong? Because let's be honest, if they had thrived financially, they would not have approached us for an acquisition. First, they were too geographically dispersed. A small center in Chicago, a small center in LA, too hard to mention remotely, especially when they were small. So they didn't have enough scale to optimize the staffing, to optimize the operational support, the marketing support, and they ended up being sort of a collection of individual businesses, as I said earlier, left on their own. Also, and that's an important lesson for many, they did not unplug unproductive experiments soon enough. And at the top of the list was NextKids, a wonderful project, which is this whole idea of developing a daycare center right next to a co-working place with obvious benefits to the moms and dads that can bring their kids to work. In fact, 10 years ago, when I witnessed the first such experiment in Silicon Valley, in Menlo Park, I thought, what a great idea, maybe we should do that. And we saw a couple of such experiments, and driven by very smart people, very passionate people, that didn't work out in the end. And neither did NextKids, that NextSpace experiment with daycare. The problem with it is not to experiment. That's how you create value, by doing new stuff that seemed to make sense, even if nobody did it before. But the problem is that they threw good money after bad money, and they did not unplug that experiment soon enough. If it had been us, I could see that we would have spent maybe $200,000 or so in that experiment, and then cut our losses when it didn't work and unplug. They ended up spending maybe 4 times as much as that, and got too caught up in their passion for that project. So that's a lesson for all of us, to stay somewhat objective about our pet projects, especially when they don't really work out. They lack business process, they lack standards, they had a weak technology environment. Not all technology providers are created equal. Some of them are better than others, although they did have some decent technology tools, but the problem is they really didn't leverage that technology. I've seen some community managers managing their membership on spreadsheet when one of those technology providers was supposed to provide that and automate that process to them. Insufficient inventory of meeting rooms and day offices, again, the low-hanging fruit for us, and that lack of focus on selling services beyond co-working memberships, and utilizing channels like CloudVO, like DaVinci, like others, better than really they did, because they were too inward focused on the needs of their community, or the perceived need of the community, because as I said, developing a CloudVO, virtual office business is also a way to bring better amenities to your community to the benefit of the members. So we had to deal with the suspicions of members, of the staff, which we very quickly overcome. One of my community manager related to me right after we made the formal announcement of the acquisition of NextSpace by Pacific Workplaces, he said, well, Pacific Workplaces, that sounds really boring. I hope they're not going to take away our weekly happy hours. And of course, the answer is no. And we showed up for these happy hours and we explained to the members what we are doing, why we acquired NextSpace, in part because we love it. We love the community creations. We love the best practices that we want to bring back to PAC, and that we also think we have a better recipe to make these communities healthier financially by adding services that eventually will benefit members, maybe not all of them, but some of them, and will not negatively impact the community. We want to grow the community. We don't want to change that community. And that message will receive loud and clear and very positively by the members. You know, also at the end, they care about, are you going to raise my fee? And we did pledge that not to raise the membership fee in the foreseeable future. And if we ever raise it in the future, which we probably will, we'll do it in a very measured way, because the way we're going to achieve great financial health in the NextSpace location is by adding services, virtual office services, meeting rooms, and growing the membership, better marketing, and not necessarily jacking up the prices. Community coordinators, community managers were also suspicious, like in any acquisition. Who are these people? Am I going to lose my job? What are they going to do? But one thing which, and they are great people, we comforted them right away. But one thing I especially appreciated is how much they genuinely cared about their communities. Are you going to change things around when my members are so happy with what they have? And the answer was pretty easy to make them feel comfortable. The other challenge was, what was the value proposition of the portfolio? We have two organizations that come from two different angles in the shared office space industry. One very community-centric versus the other one around convenience, privacy, and professionalism as its value proposition. What are the synergies? Are we going to use one brand? If so, which one? Or two brands? Can the products that were so successful at Pacific Workplaces, like Virtual Office, carry over in NextSpace? How about the technology environment? Are we going to integrate? So what we did, first thing is we kept the NextSpace brand. And we communicated that to the existing membership, which is we want to recognize that these communities, these co-working spaces are different from what Pacific Workplace is bringing, at least for now. And we want to reflect that by calling your location NextSpace, and it's more powered by Pacific Workplaces, because the immediate value we bring to these communities, it's not something that will be very visible at first, other than better amenities, more meeting rooms, and new paint and new flooring, which matters a great deal. But we're not going to change the events, the way they go about it. We're not even going to change the fee structure tremendously. But at the same time that we keep the NextSpace website going, we are focusing all of the SEO and SEM, online advertising energy on the pacificworkplace.com website. We clearly added the NextSpace location on the PAC websites, which creates a little problem because the experience in NextSpace is different from the experience in the other PAC locations. So we try to do the best we can to express that difference with pictures, with words, and also by using a separate brand that helps us emphasize that difference, because we don't want people that show up at the NextSpace location and think that all PAC locations are the same, and vice versa. And we did that way because we also realized that the models will converge, and we want to accelerate the process. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we are tearing down walls at Pacific Workplaces to provide more open space, better event space for the community to express itself, even though there will always be a higher percentage of full-time offices in Pacific workplaces than in NextSpace. And conversely, we are building more meeting rooms, more private meeting rooms, and also a few more private offices in the NextSpace location without encroaching too much, really, on the open space which we want to keep, because it's very important. That design is very important to those community. But we're doing this on both sides in such a way that the model will converge. And in 5 years, that difference between an NextSpace location and a PAC location will be so minimal that we'll probably integrate in one brand. Is it going to be NextSpace? Is it going to be Pacific Workplaces? Is it going to be something else? I don't know, because so many things can happen in the next 5 years. But it will make sense to converge the brand fully eventually. We brought PAC training and support and process to bear, to the delight, I have to say, of our NextSpace community managers that really did not have that level of support before, and free them up to be able to spend more time catering to their community. And we switched to our technology platform, which makes sense because we are using our one system / cube platform, which now was acquired by Yardi to bring even more muscles to that environment, as well as we use Salesforce on the CRM side and Intact as our ERP / accounting package. And we leverage those tools very well. I'm not saying they are the best tools there is, why we think they are, but there are other good tools. In fact, after me, Barbara with Satellite Offices is going to talk, and she's providing to the Coworking community some really good and effective tools that also communicates with CloudVO, which is very important to us. But what we do well is leverage that technology to the fullest. We did, and we are developing a virtual office and meeting room business that they did not really have, or was very embryonic, which again is going to be the main driver to financial health for all of these locations. So lessons learned in all of that, you can't rest on your laurels. No question that NextSpace had developed an amazing concept that is a big milestone in the history of co-working. Nobody that I know of in the co-working world, and I went to a lot of co-working spaces, knows how to curate community to the extent that NextSpace does it. But as it turns out, that is not enough. Whereas the community was very happy with the informality and the funkiness that you find there, there's a point where, for example, NextSpace is pet friendly. So are some of the Pacific Workplace locations. So is NextSpace co-working. But in one specific NextSpace location, that drove pet owners to provide the dog food in the middle of the break room to their dogs in a place where you could step on it, and quite frankly, that stinks. There's rules that were needed to really regulate that community a little bit better, because whereas the existing members got used to it and that didn't bother them, that really would bother some of the outside visitors. So these are little things, but those little things can be important. You need to continue to upgrade yourselves. You need to be careful about how you project, and you need to be sensitive to the expectations of people towards, higher level of amenities and maybe fresher designs, and reinvest continuously in upgrading your space. Strong communities need to be curated with care. That was very important, to be sensitive to the extent that we wanted to keep those communities and grow them. This whole effort which we conducted, I think, quite successfully to comfort the level of the community was very important. Economies of scales and organizational strength matter. Just living on a vision is not enough. You need an organization to be able to execute and deliver for you, and that was a little bit lacking, partly because of the lack of scale of NextSpace. On this point, when I provided this speech in Dublin at Coworking Europe, I came right after a panel that including people from Regis and from WeWork and others, and they all agreed that the co-working industry is likely going to evolve a little bit like the hotel industry, where there are different flavors, different value proposition. Clearly, a Hyatt is very different from a Motel 6, but they both have fulfill a need in the marketplace. But my observation to that was, I agree, but there's one thing going on in the hotel industry which is important to notice, is that there is not such a thing as totally independent operators of hotels anymore. There are people that own their own hotel, individual hotels, but they are all affiliated with a brand, with a network, with a franchise that provide, whether it's a Best Western or it's a Hyatt, that can provide economies of scales on marketing, on complex room bookings, systems, and the like. And quite frankly, I already see signs that it's very difficult for small co-working operators to make it unless you have a passionate owner that works in a space and is willing to work for minimum wage. Is very difficult because groups of companies are taking over and building very efficient network and be able to make it very well with a thin margin. When you have a portfolio like 19 locations that focuses on regional economies of scales, like Pacific Workplaces, we can do that. But if you have only one location with 10,000 square feet, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. But do not fear. That's why we have built our CloudVO sister company that promotes the Cloud Touchdown network that makes money by reselling your services, but also provide a whole infrastructure of free access to our expertise managing co-working places like NextSpace, like InnerSpace, or like Pacific Workplaces. There are franchises that are really taking off in the US, like Serendipity and others that can enable you to have your own business while at the same time benefiting from these economies of scale. So, again, I did plug in CloudVO. You may want to check what we can offer in that respect. And then the final lesson learned is, and again, because we're so good with virtual offices, it's easy for us, but virtual offices are essential to financial health. Listing with channels, marketing them locally, and designing your space to make it easy to deliver that services. It's really one critical driver to your financial success. With that, I'm going to take questions.